Welcome back to the Church for Entrepreneurs podcast. This episode of our podcast is a daily study. Daily studies are short Bible studies designed to help grow your faith. As you grow your faith, you're able to successfully achieve the calling that God's placed in your heart. Let's listen to today's daily study. Today, I want to talk about faith is learned by practice. There's some research in the learning space that says that people only learn about 10% of what they hear somebody lecture to them. And they only learn a few more percentages when they actually read something. But the highest form of learning happens when you actually do something. That's the highest form of learning. So, for example, if I think back to the time when I couldn't drive, I had ridden in the car before with my mom and dad many times. I've read some books about driving to pass a driving test. However, even though I read books about driving, I experienced driving with my mom and dad. It was totally different from the first time I actually got on the road and drove the car. Because all that textbook learning and all that watching somebody else, it played a piece of the puzzle. But I didn't really learn how to drive until I actually start to practice driving. And that's the same thing with faith. We can read the Bible. We can hear people teach us about faith from the Bible, but you don't really learn faith until you actually practice faith. Now, you maybe think to yourself, well, Amos, doesn't faith come by hearing? Yes, faith comes by hearing, but that word hearing means revelation. Faith comes by revelation, and you don't really get a revelation until you experience a thing. Let's look at Hebrews 5:8. It says, though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things he suffered. Think about what this is saying. Jesus Christ, the anointed one, Son of the Father, he had to learn obedience. He didn't read about obedience. He didn't study it. He didn't watch YouTube videos on obedience. He actually learned obedience by things he suffered. And when you see the word suffered, this translates to experience. So he learned obedience by things he experienced. So through practice of living here on this earth, he learned obedience. So if Jesus had to learn something through practice, why do we think that we could just pick it up by osmosis? If Jesus learned obedience through practice, guess what? We have to learn faith through practice. And so when we say that faith comes by hearing, hearing comes by that revelation, by that practice, by that experience, by experiencing God and experiencing Him move in many different ways. Let's go back to the Old Testament. Let's talk about the children of Israel. When they were in the wilderness for 40 years, they were in 40 years because of a lack of faith. They did not have faith in God that He can take them into the promised land. So they had to spend 40 years circling the wilderness until they grew in faith. Exodus 16:4 says, then said the Lord unto Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. So think about this. So when they was in the wilderness, the way they ate was every day God rained bread down from heaven, and we call this manna. But the catch was that they couldn't store it up for the next day. They only had to consume it the day they received it, and they had to believe God that He would bring it back again the next day. So for 40 years, God took them through this process of each day they only could gather enough for that day, and they had to trust and believe God for the next day that He would provide for them. Why was He doing this? He said, so I may prove them. Now, the word prove here is not quite like testing. It's more like you got a piece of metal. You want to get all the impurities out of it. So in order to get all the impurities out of it, you're going to prove it. And you're usually going to prove it by fire. And fire is going to burn out all the impurities. So really what God was doing here, He was teaching them to have faith in Him. By them experiencing God provided for them every day for 40 years, through that experience, through that practice, guess what? That taught them faith. That taught them how to walk in His laws. That taught them how to follow Him. So when the time came for them to take over the promised land, they were ready to go because for 40 years, they had practiced trusting God. They were learning by practice. So just like the Israelites in the Old Testament had to learn to trust God by practice, just like Jesus had to learn obedience through practice, we have to learn faith through practice. And the beautiful thing is, as an entrepreneur, we get plenty of practice to walk by faith. That's why sometimes entrepreneurs have more faith in God than people who are employees. Because when you're an employee, you get a paycheck every single month or every 2 weeks like clockwork. It almost feels like it's guaranteed. But as an entrepreneur, sometimes you get paid, sometimes you don't. You know what that does for you? It teaches you to trust and lean on God. And through that experience, you're learning that if God did it today, He'll do it tomorrow. It's almost like manna. You're breaking the mold that I have to have something consistent every single month to believe that it's going to be okay. So as an employee, you don't get an opportunity to learn how to trust God in this area of finances like you do as an entrepreneur. entrepreneur. So really, through the entrepreneurship process of trusting God, you are practicing faith, and your faith is growing and growing and growing till you get to the point that one day somebody show up, hey, I have this opportunity, you need $100,000 by tomorrow. You be like, okay, I can handle this because I practice in the little things day by day. And so if God did it in the small things, he can do it in this thing. And you get that level of faith through practice, and you get that level of faith through practice in the thing that God has called you to do. So I just want to encourage you guys today that faith is learned by practice. And don't get frustrated when you have periods of lack. Just see it as practicing, learning faith. And the more you practice, the more your faith grows, and the faster it gets between the lack and the abundance period, to the point that it's all abundance, because you are practicing until your faith grows and grows and grows and grows. That concludes today's daily study, and I pray that it was a blessing to you. Before we wrap up, if the Holy Spirit is speaking to your spirit to partner with Church for Entrepreneurs, go to churchforentrepreneurs.com/partner. Your partnership gives us the time and resources to minister to entrepreneurs around the world. Go to churchforentrepreneurs.com/partner. And if you want to connect with our ministry more, go to churchforentrepreneurs.com and join our online community. You guys be blessed, and I'll talk to you soon.